Hello, this is the Module 9 introduction video. This week in the course, you're going to be working on your second report draft, and you're going to be working on the body of the report. So for this video, I want to talk a little bit about the formatting of the report and kind of give you some tips and tricks of things that you can do in Word that will make the formatting even easier. But before I do that, I want to talk just a little bit about the content that's going to be located in the body of the report. So as you've been analyzing data, particularly in Modules 5 and Modules 8, you looked at several different categorical variables from the BRFSS, and you made either what were called univariate summaries, so those would be plots and tables where you looked at a single variable, or you made bivariate comparisons where you compared two variables together. And so similar to those assignments, for the body of your report, you're going to choose 4 demographic variables to focus on in your report, and you're going to choose 2 topic variables. And the topic variables will depend on what topic your group has chosen to work on for your report. And so what has probably happened is in the previous modules, between your group members, you have probably already looked at a lot of these variables. So you'll probably be able to use some plots that you've already created, but you may need to also create some additional new plots for the report. And so how the body of the report works is it's split into 3 different sections. So in the first section, this will look at demographics of your state. So this will be where you make univariate summaries of the 4 different demographic variables. And you can summarize these either using a relative frequency table, or you can summarize them using a bar graph. But you want to use the same choice for each of the 4 variables. So in other words, you should either have 4 frequency tables, or you should have 4 bar graphs in this section. The next section will look at compliance of your topic. So again, these will be univariate analyses of the 2 different topic variables. And so again, you'll either use relative frequency tables or bar graphs to summarize these 2 different topics. And then in the last section, you're going to make a comparison of the demographic variables to compliance of your topic variable. And these are really the most important plots or tables, because what these are going to allow you to do is these are going to allow you to look at your topic variables, compare to demographic variables, and see if you can find any types of associations or patterns that might help you narrow down which groups are in lower compliance. And so things like this can help with, you could have public health campaigns, and you really need to know who to focus on to make sure that people are participating in these different preventative measures. And so by looking at these plots, it can help you figure out, okay, well, who should we target those campaigns to? And so notice here, you're going to compare each of your demographic variables to your topic variables. So you'll have a total of 8 comparisons in this section here. Now that sounds like a lot because we're looking at total, but for the entire body requirements, you'll have 4 pages for this section, 2 pages for this section, and 8 for a total of 14 pages. But as I'm going to show you here in a minute, those 14 pages will go fairly quickly in the way that they are formatted. So here at the very end of the document, I have an example of what the formatting will look like for each of the pages. And so here I've looked at the comparison of the pneumonia vaccine by education. And if you'll remember, we looked at this comparison in one of the previous coding videos. And so what I've done is I've pasted the plot first. And so again, we saw how to create this graph earlier in the course. I've placed a, down at the bottom of the plot, I have some text that has its figure number, as well as some information someone reading the plot might need. So for example, I've used several abbreviations here, so I've included what those abbreviations are. I've also included a caveat that says, due to low sample size, this bar for the unknown section or education may not be used to make generalizations to the population or assess associations. And again, we've talked about that previously. And then I have just a couple sentences that follow that talk about, okay, this is why this plot's important. This is what this plot could, help us learn about the comparison between education and pneumonia vaccine compliance rate. And so each of your 14 pages are going to be structured very similarly to this. They'll have a title, they'll have a plot, they'll have a caption for the plot that gives any extra information that needs to be known, and then some sentences that follow that help interpret the plot and help the reader understand why this plot is important. Right? And then again, scrolling back up at the top, all of this information is included in here in terms of what information you want to include and more information about the formatting. So you will want to make sure that you go through and read the directions to make sure you don't miss any of those different pieces. So what I want to talk about in this video next is how can you create this formatting in Word and how this formatting will help you in the future when you go to create a table of contents. So what I've created is just a kind of sample report here so we can talk a little bit about formatting. So up to this point in the course, your report should look very similar to this. You have a cover sheet and you have an introduction where that introduction has some different subtopics within it. So the first thing I want to do, if you haven't done this already, I want to talk about headers and subheaders in Word and how you can format those. So for example, if we look at introduction, the introduction is my main heading for this section, and then purpose of the report, topic, location, and general description of the data source, those are kind of the subheaders. So in Word, if you click on the Home button, you should see this ribbon appear right here. And what this ribbon does is it allows you to control headers or subheaders for different sections of any document that you write. So since the introduction is my main header for this section, I'm going to click on header 1, and it's automatically going to change that formatting to match heading 1. Now, if you want to change what heading 1 format looks like, you can right click on heading 1 and click on modify, and then you can go here and change it to the color, the size, bolding, whatever you'd like that to look like. And then all of the ones that follow after the introduction, I'm going to label them heading 2. And again, you can go through and edit this just like you would for heading 1 by right-clicking on header 2, and it will change the look and feel of those. So we can click on modify, and let's say instead we wanted that color to be green. And if you click on automatically update, what it will do is everything that's labeled as a header 2, it will go ahead and change that. Now a couple things that are nice about the headers in Word is they're collapsible. So now that these are done as headers, let's say that I didn't want to look at introduction 1, I wanted to hide it for a little bit for some reason. If you click on the arrow next to it, it will collapse everything into the introduction. And again, that's because all of these are header 2s, so they fall under header 1. If you click an arrow next to header 2, it will just collapse what's within that header. All right, so once you have those added on to the introduction, we can now go on to the body of the report. So since the body is a new section, I would recommend starting that on a new page. And so one way that you can force Word to always start a new page is if we go back and we look at the directions, notice that the first section in the body is going to be, I called it generically demographics of your state. You'll probably want to give it a more informative title. So I might call it, for example, Kentucky demographics. So if you move your cursor to the front of any title, if you want, or header rather, and you want that header to start on a new page, you can click on Insert, Page Break, and that will force this section to always be on a new page. So notice, even if I come here to the introduction and I make some changes, I add in some text, it doesn't actually move this down. Whereas if I didn't put the page break there, I'd always have to keep adjusting where that's located. Now, since this is going to be the start of a new section, I'm going to go back to home. I want to change that over to a header 1. And then I'm going to have 4 different demographic variables, each having their own page within this section. So I'm just going to generically write variable 1, variable 2, variable 3, and variable 4. Of course, you will give these, more appropriate headers based on the actual variables that you're looking at. And then all 4 of these, I'm going to want to be at a heading 2. And then what I want to do is each of these need to have their own page. Now, variable 1, I'm going to keep on this page because I don't want to have a big blank page between my first header and my second header. But variable 2 and 3 and 4, I'm going to go ahead and put page breaks in front of each of them. And so now they're all on their own page. And so I recommend going ahead and doing this formatting first, creating all your blank pages, and then going in and filling in the information. And so again, our next section that we're going to look at is going to be compliance of topic. So I'm just going to go ahead and again, you'll give this a more informative section, and you're going to have 2 variables in this section. Okay, so I'm going to want compliance to start on a new page. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my page break there. Compliance, since it's a new section, I'm going to make it header 1, both of these a heading 2, and then again, variable 1 I'm just going to keep here so I don't end up with a bunch of blank space, but I'm also going to put a page break in for variable 2. And then you'll just do the exact same thing for the comparison section. So I highly recommend go ahead and format your document before you add any of the sections in, and then go in and add in the different bits of information. So I'm going to show you what this would look like, how to add in the different bits of information to help with formatting as well. So I'm going to go in and enter in what we saw earlier, which was that pneumonia vaccine to education comparison. So here, let's go ahead and I will add in our third section. So again, remembering that our third section is the comparison of demographic variables with compliance. So again, you'll want to give this a better title than this, but again, we're going to insert a page break. Oops. Make sure we place it in the right place. And then let's say that my first comparison was that comparison of pneumonia vaccine to education. So as my header 2 or my subheader, I'm just copying this over, the pneumonia vaccine compliance with education. I'm going to change that over to a header 2. All right. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to insert my plot. So one thing to keep in mind with your plots is when you're working in RStudio, you want to make sure that you're actually saving the image from RStudio. So let's just have a reminder of how we can do that. So here in RStudio, I have the Module 8 example where I created this plot. So the first thing in RStudio is make sure that you have stretched this in the window so that you can see all of your labels here, everything is visible. Remember, if this window is really small, you might see some overlap here and the labels on the axes aren't easy to read. So you just want to make sure that you've got this stretched out to where they're easy to read. From here, you want to click Export, Save as Image. You don't want to take screenshots and crop these. If you take a screenshot and try to paste it, a lot of times the formatting doesn't look good, and then if you go to adjust the picture, you're going to have some different issues. So you just want to click on Save as Image, and then here you can pick the folder that you want to save it to on your computer. I'm going to click Cancel here because I've already got a folder that I want. And then you can give it whatever name that you want for your report. So I might name this one Pneumonia in Education, so I remember that that is that comparison, and then I click Save. So going back to our Word document, the first thing I'm going to do is insert that image. So we can insert pictures from this device. This will bring up, you see my dog right there, different images from my computer. And so from there, you just go through and you navigate to where on your computer you saved that image. So I'm going to do that right now. And so I have inserted the image. Now, in order to put that footnote on the image that we saw in the example from the directions, what you can then do is if you click on the image and then you right click, you'll notice there's an insert caption option. Now, what I have found is when I use the insert caption option, you type your caption in here, but it's going to limit the number of words that you can put there. So what I recommend doing is just going ahead and clicking OK with whatever you have there, and then you can click down here and actually edit what you want it to say. You can also edit the color of the text. So for example, if we highlight it, I can come up here, I can change that text to whatever I want it, but it's much easier to edit it this way than it is actually using the caption box. And then once you're done, you can just click off from that. And now you can go through and write your regular text. So then you would have that paragraph at the bottom of the figure that actually talks about, how to interpret the figure, how the figure is useful, and what the reader can learn from it. Now, one thing to notice, if every once in a while, Word will automatically make this one of your headers. If you ever have text that's a header and you don't want it to be, you can just highlight it and then click on normal. And so you'd enter that, and then you would just go on to the next one. So one thing that I really recommend is if your group decides to split up the work and to work on different pieces of this individually, I highly recommend after that is done, getting together as a group, looking through the document as a whole to make sure that it doesn't read like a document that's been pieced together by different people, but rather, that it has a cohesive feel. It feels like, a single author has written it as you work through the different pieces. So that way it's just easier for the reader to follow. And so again, if you do work on pieces individually, make sure you come together at the end to have a full look at the document to make sure everything looks similar. And again, it has a very natural flow to it as you move throughout the document. In the next introduction video, if you use these headers and create this, what I'm going to do is I'll show you how you can actually use Word to auto-generate your table of contents for your document. So that's another reason that using these headers are really useful in a Word document, because we can actually get Word to do some of the work for us in the future. So as always, if you have any questions or you need help with anything, please feel free to reach out.